names like First Nation, which is a part of the Sequep Nation. Hello, my name is Chief Willie Sellers, and I'll be speaking today on behalf of the family, on behalf of the community, and really wanted to start off in a good way by asking Elder Charlene Bellew if she could start us off with a prayer and have a drum song for the family, and really to, empower us for the announcement that we're going to make today. Thank you for that, Charlene. One thing that I've learned in my time as a leader of the community and as a kid growing up, especially, you see the strength of songs, you see the strength of prayers, and you see the strength of what it can do to the healing journey by holding up your culture. Today is a very hard day at WLFN, and starting us off with a healing song, Charlene, I thank you and I hold you up on behalf of council, on behalf of the family. It's that strength that helps us get through the hard times. So by picking up that drum and hearing the songs and being able to participate and show those ancestors that we didn't lose our culture and that we are a strong people, it's a big part of how we're healing as Indigenous peoples, but also as a community. Again, I'd like to welcome you to the traditional territory of the Williams Lake First Nation. Welcome you all here today in the room here and also online. On Sunday, July 10th, there was a situation involving a band member. His name was Rojan Alphonse, and he is a member of the Williams Lake First Nation. The incident began with the family reporting to the RCMP their concerns about Rojan's mental state and about the potential for self-harm. What should have resulted in a welfare check with properly trained individuals instructed to de-escalate the situation, talk Rojan down, instead resulted in a response by a swarm of ERT personnel with automatic weapons, body armor, armed vehicles, and tear gas. In the midst of this aggressive and violent confrontation by the RCMP, Rojan took his life. We are all in shock and mourning. When is it common practice that an ERT team is deployed to a situation where a person is threatening suicide? The situation was escalated by the social media presence of onlookers and immediately branded as a gang situation and treated as such. We're still waiting additional details, but if this was a non-Indigenous person, would the result have been the same? The outcomes that we continue to see indicate that there is something different going on in this country. We all deserve to know that justice is equally applied because we all deserve justice. This isn't the first time we've seen treatment like this in our community or in this family either. I reference and hold up Isidore and Paul Alphonse mistreatment and a public inquiry that resulted in over 20 recommendations to the RCMP back in 2000. Were those recommendations followed? There has not been necessary changes in our policing system in Canada in a long time. What is wrong in the system to cause these outcomes in our communities? This is not just an Indigenous issue. It is an issue for all Canadians. What happened on Sunday, July 10th has significantly impacted our confidence in the system. It has entirely undermined our confidence in the system. We're sitting here today in unison with the family and the UBCIC because everyone deserves justice. What is wrong in the system to cause these outcomes, and what are we doing about it to see change? That is the big question that we ask Canadians, that we ask the government, that we ask the system. What are we doing to see change in this country? Time and time again, we see this treatment, this mistreatment of Indigenous peoples in every single one of our communities. Injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I'm like a cell in all my relations.
I'd like to start off by saying how my husband of 21 years of a loving man to me and our kids, my mom, my nieces, and all my in-laws. He made sure to take care of us all. He made sure to teach the kids to hunt, to fish. For all of our memories will be forever and cherished and never forgotten. He was a hardworking man that I will never forget. The words from the RCMP say it's to consider a crime when it was just a distress call for help for the people of color in our city, which there is many surrounding Aboriginal communities, will now have a fear of calling the RCMP. I, for one, say with sincere, I will never call or trust the RCMP officer with how they had responded to a call for help that had turned into a tragic death. My kids, my mother and father-in-law's son, my sister and brother-in-law's brother. The list goes on for his family, my family, our friends, and to our community members. My apology, no apology will make up for our loss and the tragedy of this loving man. We call for justice on how our RCMP have followed through on this call when our daughter was still home and they still had gas bombed our family home while she without her hands coming up out of the house and put into a cop car with no AC. She has said how hot the RCMP cop car was. She just about couldn't breathe for a while with no phone call to me or to my sister-in-law, which they did have our numbers, to keep informed or to even letting us talk to Rojan. Our daughter was questioned by a male police officer with no parent permission. No female in the room, no call to me on her whereabouts. We are very lucky our daughter was not harmed. Rojan was a loving man to us all. Rojan was a loving man to us all. They asked her, why didn't you come out? Why would she come out when there is full force of cops out there, when she is safe with her loving, caring dad? The fear of the RCMP will always be there for our daughter and for us all. Yes, they had no compassion or concern of his mental state, only seeing him as a threat when they knew it was a distress call and not a criminal act. As for Scott Nelson, that made this public and talked selfish in the background, I can't believe how he assumed what was going on. He was assuming it was gang related, and the list goes on. Family was finding out from videos that Scott Nelson was posting live video feeds. Family didn't know what happened. The RCMP took my phone, so I couldn't call anyone. I could never forgive RCMP or Scott. I have no home, no Rojan. I have nothing, but I do have family. We have life healing. Thank you.
Why Pisnak Seal, Esquis Asiut. In our Nsilichin language, that's simply good day, my dear friends and relatives. My traditional name is Asiut. And I want to, on behalf of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, convey our most sincere condolences and sympathies to the family for this needless tragedy that has taken place here in Williams Lake. The Union of BC Indian Chiefs has been with us now since 1969. It was first formed in Kamloops, where all the chiefs got together and basically realized that we were much stronger united and working together. And back in the 60s was very volatile, very politically volatile. In the US, we had the anti-Vietnam War movement, where you had thousands of policemen in the streets with clubs and tear gas and rifles. You had the National Guard out. There were the race riots in the major cities. We had the American Indian movement occupying Wounded Knee. We had Cache Creek. There was an armed standoff in Cache Creek. So they were absolutely incredible times. And that's when the UBCIC was formed, so that we would have an organized group to speak for our people, to represent our people, and most importantly, to support our people. And I can tell you that I have been personally involved in too many of these wrongful deaths at the hand of not only the RCMP, but other police agencies. The stark fact of the matter is the issue is the RCMP itself. The RCMP is populated with rednecks that have an inherent bloodlust against people of color, Black people, Indigenous people, Asian and South Asian people. And these incidents happen right across Turtle Island. And our organization and many like us have been involved in these inquiries. I'm old enough to remember Fred Quilt and the Caribou Justice Inquiry, the Manitoba Justice Inquiry, where J.J. Harper, who was much like your chief here, a very clean-cut, upstanding individual who held a high position. And he was walking down the street at night in Winnipeg, and the cops came along and just shot him down. And that's been going on now for decades. And the RCMP itself, as an organization, is in complete disarray. The chief commissioner is being found out to have engaged in political interference in the mass shooting in Nova Scotia, and was trying to tell the justice minister not to disclose the type of weapons used. And I don't think she's going to survive this, which is a good thing, because we need to completely can all those senior officers that are the ones that are directing the lower ranks. But the lower ranks too, I think, are primarily responsible for these deaths because of that inherent redneck bloodlust they have against us. And the higher ranks will not bring them to task. They will not hold them accountable. And they don't suffer any consequences. In Seattle, you may remember that carver that was walking down the street whittling on a stick, and that officer jumped out of his police car and shot him 4 times. And this was a harmless man that was always in the downtown core carving and selling his work. That officer was canned the next day, and there were lawsuits brought against him and everything like that, but that doesn't happen up here. They are never fired. Quite often they're relocated to another community. So we need to change that. Somehow we need to change that. It's not only our people that are being shot down. I remember Ian Bush in McLeod Lake. He was in the cells. The officer was behind him and shot him in the back of the head. And I know his mom. And he said, well, it was self-defense. I felt threatened. When the IIO was first formed, we were really happy. There's people in this room that were involved in bringing that organization together, the Independent Investigation Organization that supposedly oversees policing. And it's proved to be absolutely useless because it's not dealing with the RCMP, it's not dealing with the municipal police forces and their brutality and violence. So we have a real serious problem here. And as I said in the beginning, I've heard too many tears. I've heard too many families crying, grief-stricken because they've lost a loved one, because the RCMP simply roll up in their armored vehicles, their military assault weapons, their body armor, their goggles. They make sure their identity is concealed, and they just go in and start to shoot. And they have no capacity to have a special mental health team that would go in and work with an individual that's distressed. And that recommendation has been made probably since Fred Quilt and Paul Alphonse. And yet they still operate with impunity because there's no consequences. My wife, Joan, who wanted to be here, said that what should happen is they should lose their pension. The minute they pull the trigger in any circumstance, they should lose their pension. And that's what all of them really hold dear and near, is their pension. That should be the thing that happens automatically. And you'd see a dramatic stop in what they've been doing. I've been involved in so many inquiries, not only policing missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and inquiries are heartbreaking because you spend so much time and effort and you start to hope that it's going to make a difference, and it doesn't. You know, it goes on as usual. So the Union of BC Indian Chiefs is known, has deep roots in this province. It's highly respected across the country and globally. And it's part of our work to go to communities where something like this happens and to support the family, support the community, and do whatever we can. And in terms of the inquiry and whatever other steps you may wish to take, we're there to help you. You're not alone. You have a very capable chief here. And, you know, I used to go to the Williams Lake Stampede when I was a teenager. And that was a long time ago. I'm 72 now. And, you know, I remember sugarcane. And your community now, I mean, I've seen a lot. And I was so impressed when I drove out here this morning. I thought, that's got to be the band office. You know, it's a big, huge building. And no, well, that one over there has got to be the band office. So you've done amazing things here. And I know a lot of it is involved with healing. That's the cornerstone of moving forward. I really love your slogan, culturally centered, future focused. Whoever came up with that, you know, has got their act together. So I imagine it was a collective effort, but yeah, the Williams Lake Indian Band is an amazing community. And I know, like all of the wildfires that you experienced and different challenges, you worked your way through those. And like all of our people everywhere, we're incredibly resilient. We're still here. It warms my heart when I come into a boardroom, you know, and we start off with a prayer and a drum song, because, you know, in my humble opinion, that's a poke in the eye to the residential school, because we still speak our language and we still sing our songs and we still fight for the land and the people. And that's what we were taught to do. And that's what we're teaching our children and grandchildren. It's about the land and the people. That's what it's about. So I drove all the way up here last night from Penticton, drove through that rainstorm. That was, you know, I was actually floating on the road. Like it was, thank goodness there wasn't a lot of direct lightning in that storm. But it's good to be here again. I'm so happy. I wish Joan was here. Joan and I have been together for 45 years. And it's the movement that brought us together. We were first involved with Leonard Peltier from the American Indian Movement when he was being extradited back to the States. And that was the consequence of 2 FBI agents attacking their camp with M16s. And the FBI agents were shot. And Leonard is still in jail now. You know, it's been like almost 50 years now. And he'll never get out. But he defended the people. And, you know, it's horrible when we as Indigenous people have to fear the very people that are supposed to protect us, keep us safe, protect our homes. You know, they're the enemy. And we have to, you know, work together and speak with a single voice. For those of you that may know me, you know, my whole life has been dedicated to political activism. You know, I've pretty much been at every major, I was in Burnt Church. Joan and I were in Burnt Church. Joan and I drove down to Standing Rock, which was an incredibly long drive, but that was an amazing sight to see. When we got there, there was 11,000 people in that camp. And there was every flag that you can imagine from all of our territories and communities. And it was just amazing. It was a small town. Our people come together to stand in solidarity. And back in the 60s, that's the way it was. It was complete solidarity. We weren't arguing or things like that. We stood together. When the call came out, you dropped everything you were doing and you went to support whatever community needed support. So somehow we need to find our way back to those values and understand that we have a sacred responsibility to support each other and protect the land and the people. So I have 15 grandchildren. I started out red headband, sunglasses, long hair, military fatigue jacket, Vietnam jungle combat boots. And I was so angry. I was angry at the world. I was apprehended when I was a baby. And I grew up completely alienated and isolated from my family. I didn't hear our language. I didn't hear our songs. I didn't hear the drum. I grew up in Quesnel. That's why I came to the Williams Lake Stampede. So, you know, life is amazing. It's been an amazing journey for me. And I'm just so grateful that when you're 72 years old, you have a lot of health issues. And I'm so grateful that I'm healthy enough to be here and to stand with the family. So anything we can do to support you, anything. I just want to end off by sharing my own personal view about these issues is, you know, what a ritual is. You do the same thing over and over again, like ceremonies, things of that nature. But inquiries have become ritualized. You know, it's a bonanza for the lawyers on both sides, right? You walk into an inquiry room and all of these chairs and along the wall would be lawyers in suits. And I think, you know, we should start suing the Department of Justice, the Minister of Justice, all the way down to the guys that went into that apartment. They all should be sued. And once we start doing that, they're going to say, whoa, whoa, we should let the mental health team go in there. I don't want to lose my pension. I don't want to get sued. Those Indians have lawyers now. So with that, I would just like to thank you for your time and patience, and so glad to be here. Right, Lim.
Thank you, Grand Chief. Just to get our point across and show the strength of unity, we invited and we asked for the support of the UBCIC. And Williams Lake First Nation is a successful organization, successful First Nation government. We're this big, bright, shining light for the Caribou Chilcotin. We're a big, bright, shining light for the Secwepemc Nation. But we still have the same trauma in our communities. And the entities that are supposed to be protecting us, that are supposed to be holding us up and supporting us, we can't even trust them. And we work so hard to build these relationships. We work so hard, going against the grain and against the norm to build these relationships and have faith in the system. And it continues to let us down. You can see visibly the hurt and the anger up here. When is that hurt and that anger going to stop? Is what we're saying. When is change going to create a society where we're all equal, not only as Indigenous peoples, but as Canadians? Do we have Mary Ellen on?
Yes, Chief, I'm here. Chief Sellers, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you, Chief. First of all, I'm zooming in from Winnipeg, the traditional territory of the Cree, Anishinaabe, and Assiniboine. And I'm pleased to be joining you virtually today. I'd also like to thank Charlene Billow for the prayer, and thank you for the invitation to join you. And I'd also like to express my deepest condolences to the family who have gone through this horrific tragedy. I'm a lawyer for the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, and I'm here to stand with and support this family, the nation, and also, as Grand Chief Stuart Phillips said, lend our full support to the fact that this horrible tragedy that has occurred has really laid bare a serious concern that is not a new concern, but it's one that obviously has not been heard and addressed, which is public safety in community, and in particular when there is a person who has a crisis. And if that crisis, of course, for First Nations people, that crisis is often because of difficulties in the past caused by policies of Canada, like residential schools, the child welfare system, other things that have caused enormous stresses for families, and not to mention the pandemic situation that has isolated and harmed so many families. When families call for support, they need support, culturally safe support. They don't need tear gas and escalation and police emergency response coming to cause so much distress that an individual acts in a way in response to that situation and harms himself in this tragic way. This is a tragic loss. And as a lawyer for the Union of BC Indian Chiefs, we wanted to raise again that these issues have come forward multiple times, as Grand Chief Stuart Phillip has said, but so little change has happened. The services for public safety should be services that are culturally safe, that de-escalate conflict, that treat people with respect, that understand ways to help families, children, parents who are struggling. And the violence that occurred here has to be taken very seriously and looked at, because it would seem very much to us that this was preventable, that this should not have occurred, and this family should have their father, this community should have their member. So from a legal viewpoint, there was a terrible wrong that occurred here. There's a lot of explaining to do for how this happened and the types of commitments that have been made to improve policing service, which clearly this incident shows have not been effective, and it's unacceptable. So I wanted to just say a few additional words. Chief Sellers, thank you, just to lend my support and to say that this is an instance of horrific harm caused by a system that needs to be fully accountable and needs to address this gap. So that public safety in a safe community is a basic human right. And for First Nations, police responses are not providing safety. And of course, First Nations communities do not have their own police, peacekeeping services. They have to rely on making that phone call to get support. And they expect support and they didn't get support. And that's not acceptable. And that's not on the family. That's not on the individual. That's not on the First Nation. That's on the system, and it has to change. So again, I want to close by saying my deepest condolences. And this horrific tragedy will not pass without sharp action and response. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. The Williams Lake First Nation, along with the UBCIC, on behalf of the family, will be demanding a full, independent public inquiry into the handling of the RCMP's response to the distress call, Roger and Alphonse. Be looking for support and be looking for our request to be upheld in the coming days, and be looking for a response out of the government in short order. I think now we would open it up for questions if there is any. If not, I would like to close with a prayer and song. Oh, okay.
Hi, my name is Hazel Alphonse. I'm the mother of the Roger and Alphonse. I just want to say Kito and I lost our son, in which it shouldn't have happened. Just imagine yourself with all the cops around you and with all the rifles, what they had. Just imagine my son was scared. I keep trying to, I keep putting myself in Rojan's home, me being there with my daughter and all these cops around us. I keep trying to, and because I know like Kiddo and I, we know our son. He wasn't a dangerous man. He was a loving person. We always said, I love you when we leave one another. He always with family. We always had a family gathering. There was never a time where he argued with us. Like for my birthday, he always made got me presents. He always did with family too. And I'm gonna say, you know, like I'm thanking all the supporters that are there with us. I'm thanking Charlene and Willie and the rest. Like this morning, we had to deal with our the funeral arrangements. That was another tough one. But I do believe in my traditional. I always put tobacco down, put water down for strength. Always say my prayers. I thought it was going to be hard sitting here to speak to every one of you. My son, Rojan, I'll never, ever hear the word, I love you, Mom. I keep waiting for him to come to the house and it's not. Hurt my mom's. My mom was heartbroken. My mom is 82 years old. So I just want to say thank you for all this. And you know, Steve, thank you.
And good morning, this work one. I'd just like to thank you all for the support that you gave us. So awesome. And I forgot what I was going to say. There's a lot of discrimination against natives earlier, long time ago, and we need to put a stop to that. And but nowadays is different than years gone by, where you can do what you want with the natives. But nowadays, we got the education. We are not second-class people like we were treated before. I'd like to thank Chief Willie and all the counselors for
change, making sure that something like this doesn't happen in our communities ever again. Making sure that the legacy and the memory of Rojan is never forgotten because of the change that he was able to instill in the system, so that our communities don't feel the same hurt, see the same anger, experience the same trauma that not only WLFN has, but the Caribou Chilcotin and the city of Williams Lake. Were there no? Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. I hope that I'd hope to think that we are in your prayers and we are in your songs. I'd like to close with a prayer and a song today. Jean, could you give us a closing prayer today? And then we could give a closing song.